What up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Gen Report. This is part 2 of our last void. We didn't get a chance to discuss some of the other topics that were mentioned in our previous episode, but we're going to continue that discussion here. The Odyssey has been getting a lot of backlash, and this is something that Brian and I have been talking about for some time now. A past couple of weeks, and anything that came out of the Odyssey as far as news and headlines has been eye-catching. There's been a lot of criticisms to the choices that Nolan has made with this film, so we'll get into that. James Bond updates from casting director and writer. Masters of the Universe reactions have been pretty positive. Whether that translates into box office, I don't know, but it seems to be getting pretty good word of mouth, Brian. So I think we're not going to definitely get to the 2 billion number that I talked about some time ago that I was excited for, but hopefully they can make some money that perhaps causes the possibility of a second one. Who knows? And hopefully they learn from it, but we'll see. We'll talk about that. Fast and the Furious TV series, that'll be a quick conversation. And Bernthal talks about the conditions under which he would return for The Punisher. Brian, The Odyssey, a movie that when it was announced, people were like, wow, he's doing this. And knowing Chris Nolan in terms of how he does VFX and all this other stuff, he makes his stuff look grand and, I don't know, believable, I would say. But there's been a lot of criticism, man. And it just doesn't look good for him. I think we're going to get a lot of Willie Dynamites in this movie. I think there's a potential for a lot of people going down them stairs after seeing some of the stuff. They're going to probably have enough of it. But what have you been hearing, Brian? And what do you think are the chances of Nolan's film, this film, to be a box office success?
Well, I think the reports of the complete box office demise of the Odyssey are greatly premature, and I think even if we're stepping back and you're trying to rope this project now into some of the biggest culture wars, lightning rods of the kind of post-COVID era that Disney had their name on, for example, a lot of those still made decent money, right? If we're being honest. So yeah. The idea that like somehow this has gone from like a surefire $1 billion project to like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a $200 million write-off, like stop. That's not, to me, that's ridiculous talk. It's Christopher Nolan. He's still the most eventized film director working today. There is a base. There is a curiosity about his use of IMAX and the visuals that's simply going to get this film to a minimum level. I think the question which we had started to ask even before, honestly, this stuff moved center stage was this idea of the Odyssey as subject matter coming off of Oppenheimer. And then just the way these teasers and trailers were kind of looking and making you feel or not feel. We kind of were asking the question of like, is it a sure thing that he's just going to level up into the $1 billion club again or 1.2, 1.3? We were kind of saying, it's not a layup, right? It might happen, but it's not a layup. And then, like, it felt like things took a turn from sort of questions to full on, for the first time, really the first time in his career. I was trying to think through this. Really, for the first time in his career, one of his films has become one of those films in the eyes of people. And what we mean by that is the talk is not about the story. It isn't really about the story or the visuals or the quality or the technician of the technicals of the filmmaking. It is about the culture stuff on both sides. Mm-hmm. And I think it started, honestly, you know where it started? It started with the accents. The first sign of trouble, right? And when the very first sign of trouble in the first teaser was like people were noting this American accent thing and like, why aren't they using the Shakespearean British, kind of style that ancient epics always use, and why are they talking kind of modern lingo? And then I think that then became the second stage of that was the armor. So people got on him for the fact that he prides himself on all this research and sort of research into history, but he was using kind of this traditional Roman looking armor. And people were like, well, if you read Homer's poem, Homer actually specifically describes Odysseus and the armor he's wearing. And it's a much different era of armor. It has like tusks. It has a lot more ornate design. And it's like, why is Nolan using the typical red plume and the Roman helmet? So that was like stage 2. But stage 3 was the cast.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're full blown here about who's playing who. Should they be allowed to play that? And how, Hollywood gone Hollywood, and people are weighing in from both sides of the aisle. We've got some quotes. We got some quotes from Nolan. We got some quotes from Lupita Nyong'o, who unfortunately has been, one of the lead targets of this. But I think the main question, to throw it back to you, Pablo, is this. As we said, this is the first time I can think of Nolan really being dragged into this or putting himself into it. I think we have to ask the question of like how much of it is him versus how much of it is the externals, to where he is now, as maybe the preeminent working director in Hollywood, now being framed as a sort of divisive figure because of his casting and creative choices. So how much damage do you think is actually being done, not just to the project, but to the Nolan brand, right?
I think this is certainly the beginning of a questioning of Nolan's work. This will be what they say, the fulcrum, I would say, or the tipping point of how people sort of look at Nolan's vision and how he casts his movie. This certainly has to do, I think, a lot with him and his choices. He's always been different in how he approaches his film. He has a specific vision. Although for this one, Brian, I just don't know if the choices that he made for specific characters is going to work. I just don't see it happening. It's more specifically for Achilles, which we'll get into that, because I think this is the moment that perhaps you're going to see the Willie Dynamites of the world walking down those stairs, because it's like me. I've been saying this for a long time. If you've been watching the show, Ralph Macchio can't beat me. And this is an instance where if you look at, I don't know how he's going to pull this off, but especially more with Achilles, I don't know how he's going to pull this off as far as people believing that this was the great warrior that we've heard and seen in specific films about his greatness as a fighter. This is just not going to look good.
Well, okay. So you want to start there. So to be clear, that has not been 100% confirmed.
Okay.
Lupita Nyong'o as Helen has been confirmed. Elliot Page as Achilles' ghost has not been confirmed.
Okay.
But that is the rumor that has, among one or two or three other things, taken over the internet. I mean, the memes are out of control. Look, they obviously have a working history together from inception.
Yeah.
Back when she was Ellen Page. But I have like a weird, can't quite sort it out reaction to that particular one, if it's true, which is, for all the things I think I know Christopher Nolan is as a filmmaker, he's pretty specific about his details and his choices. And if Elliot Page has been cast as the ghost of Achilles, that on the surface seems like such an outlandish, nonsensical decision that I feel like I've been quoting Al Pacino from The Insider this week for some random reason. Al Pacino and Russell Crowe, because Pacino has all these crazy like shouting one-liners, but he has one in there where he says, "I'm getting pissed off and curious." There's just a piece of me that's like, this is so out there.
Yeah.
That doesn't a guy like Nolan have to have a reason or a design for even venturing in that direction that makes me at least want to see the scene before I kind of join the meme crowd on how silly this is. That particular one. I don't know why I feel that way, because I probably should be like viscerally be like, what? It's just so bizarre that I feel like there's a purpose here that has not been revealed. And maybe it won't do anything or it won't change anyone's mind, but I'm at least, because it's Nolan, I'm at least just kind of like keeping it at arm's length to see what this scene, if this is true, what this scene entails.
Will look like. Yeah. Definitely sparks curiosity. But as far as the majority of people, if this is true, finding that choice suitable, I think is.
Oh, it's a risk.
It is definitely not going to land. And then there was this other one with Travis Scott as, I guess, the poet. What is his role in this movie?
So now you're hitting on something which I think is really interesting, which is if you go through where the biggest lightning rod casting and characters are, what's interesting to me is that all of them fall into the cameo to likely very small supporting role. So what I mean by that is, if you know the story of the Odyssey, we just talked about Elliot Page maybe as Achilles' ghost. Well, Achilles is not a major figure in the Odyssey, right? He's a central figure of the Iliad. The Odyssey is not his story. Travis Scott is literally playing a bard, a random bard who's cameoing in the movie. And if you're wondering why Travis Scott, it's because he did work on Tenet with Ludwig Göransson, including the song at the end credits. So there is history with Christopher Nolan. They are friends. That's the little linkage there. But his character is not a meaningful character to the film, right? And then even Helen, the character, again, Helen is a feature figure in the Iliad, not in the Odyssey. So we are spending a lot of time dissecting choices around characters who are not likely to be on screen for more than a scene or two max. Now, should that mean we don't talk about it? No, not necessarily. I'm simply pointing out that that is where the fulcrums have been for this discussion. And so Nolan himself responded to the Travis Scott question. And that's why let's bring him in now. Because one thing I do think is interesting and may speak to some degree of concern from the Nolan camp is he is much more visible personally than he's ever been for projects. Now, maybe that's because he won Best Director for Oppenheimer and he's the president of the Directors Guild. Maybe. But he has sat for interviews with 60 Minutes. He did a feature for Time Magazine. These are not things that Christopher Nolan was doing when he was getting nominated for Dunkirk, for example. So there is a little bit of, he is putting himself front and center. And therefore, I think that naturally you almost invite and perhaps justify more debate about you when you do that. So he was asked about Travis Scott. Here's his quote. "I cast him because I wanted to nod toward the idea that this story has been handed down as oral poetry, which is analogous to rap," end quote. So, which led to, quite honestly, a lot of fairly nasty critiques of Travis Scott's lyrics and his lyric archive compared to Homer's poems, and saying, really? Like, you're really going to compare these two things? I'm not getting into that. Simply telling you this is what Nolan, this is where his head is at. And like I said, he has a working relationship with Scott from before. That's the choice.
I would have been probably better with Mos Def than Travis Scott.
Oh, so your issue is which artist he chose?
Not even which artist, but if I wouldn't have chosen any of them.
Well, some of the commentary, to be quite honest, felt like a very insidious shots fired at hip hop for reasons that are not ones we want to talk about here, but are completely unfounded. Like, it seems like people use this as an excuse to basically be, and I'm like, I don't know rap lyrics in and out. But I probably find it hard to believe that Travis Scott's lyrics are all that different from, in terms of style and content. I mean, sure, there's a lot of, and so I'm like, what you're really saying is people who are really coming down hard on this is like, you have a bone to pick with rap, and your bone to pick with rap might not be about the music itself. And I'm not really here to give a lot of airtime to that.
Yeah.
Interesting that Nolan chose to wade into this particular debate. The second one is Helen. Or not the second one, the third one. We did Elliot Page first. We did Travis Scott second. Helen. This has probably been, I think this has actually been the nastiest one in the discourse. And Lupita Nyong'o herself, I thought very graciously responded to this. I mean, she maybe good publicist maybe on this one, but she certainly kept it classy. But there's a lot of, she's playing Helen of Troy, and so the face that launched 1,000 ships. Helen is described in the Odyssey by Homer as having fair skin, blue eyes. I think often thought of as having blonde hair. So that has led a lot of people to assail the choice, assail the actress, and assail Nolan. It has also led to, I will say, and I need to bring this in here because I think I sent this to you and I was like, this is the irony of this. It has also brought some wild defenses of the choice. It's like a massive overcorrection to the choice. It's like, I'm not only going to defend this, I'm actually going to defend it by moving on to equally ridiculous grounds. See The View, if you would like to get one example of that.
Okay.
Nyong'o's quote / defense is just, quote, "This is a mythological story, not a historical drama. I'm very supportive of Chris's intention with it and with the version of the story he is telling, and our cast is representative of the world. So I'm not spending my time thinking of a defense. The criticism will exist whether I engage with it or not." Well, that is 1,000% true. "It's quite something to be part of the Odyssey because it's so grand. It spans worlds, so that's why the cast is what it is. We're occupying the epic narrative of our time. I was so deeply honored to be entrusted with the role," end quote. That last bit to me is actually, I think that's the clue to what Nolan is actually doing. Her saying we are occupying the epic narrative of our time. There is definitely a real sense of this is a complete modernization or attempted modernization of the story. And that ties the accents to some of the visual choices, to some of the casting choices together. I think that's what she's telling you.
I'm going to say one word, and you tell me what you think. Hamilton.
I think you're 1,000% right. Now, you know that's going to be right. People are going to plant a flag on one side and say woke, and people are going to plant a flag on another side, and they're going to say modern, representative, right? Like that's kind of where you end up with that. But I think you hit on it. I thought of the same thing when I read this quote. I think that's exactly what you're circling if you're looking for the Nolan parallel for something that was, in that case, more definably historical, right? There's more like, okay, I can prove who looked like what and who was what, and I'm still updating that, redoing it, analogizing it into musical form. I think that quote is the quote that's been I think people are missing it, but I actually think she's telling you what he's trying to do.
In certain situations, lightning doesn't strike twice. As far as his attempt at modernizing certain things, it's a bit of a stretch. And I don't think this gamble, or this choice, I would say, not gamble, but this choice will be beneficial to the film and to the success of it. So I get what he's trying to do or what he wants to do. I get, but it's only happening because it's Nolan.
Ooh, I think it's only as big of a deal as it is because it's Nolan. I think if any other director did something like this, I think people would have something to say about it. I think it's just a bigger deal because of who's doing it.
Think about what happened with the Superman joint with J.J. Abrams and what's the other guy's name? Yes, they were supposed to do a black Superman.
Yeah. That was happening. That was green-lit. And then management changes and that died on the vine.
It's the same thing, Brian, as somebody like Chris Nolan says, I'm going to do Black Panther, but I'm going to make him South African.
Well, so that's become part of the debate though, right? You had the people doing well, how come nobody gets mad? How come we don't get mad? So I wanted to make this point about the Odyssey in particular, because this is I think one of the things going around very accurately, and I sent it to you as well, is this is you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain, which feels like it's very much happened to Christopher Nolan from one of his own movies.
Mm-hmm.
If you rewind the clock 9 to 12 months ago, when the Odyssey casting was first coming out, before we had seen footage, some of the same people who are vehemently defending, or some of the same camps who are vehemently defending the Lupita Nyong'o, Elliot Page, Travis Scott choices now, were actually criticizing this movie for the very same reason. Why? Matt Damon, Anne Hathaway, Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, they were accusing Christopher Nolan of whitewashing the Odyssey. You just Google it. There are articles about Christopher Nolan whitewashing the Odyssey and choosing American to British actors to play Greek parts. There was a lot of complaints about why no Greeks? Why are there no actual Greeks in the cast? So I simply bring this up to say, it would seem when it comes to this subject matter, maybe he couldn't win, because if he was getting flogged for the leads being white or white American, he's now getting flogged by certain camps for representation throughout the rest of the cast. So which is it, right? Now, I would also point out, this is a guy who historically, even though he was kind of above it, he did catch some heat because Oppenheimer's cast was so white and still won 7 Oscars. He's gotten heat for that before. This whole, other than John David Washington, it's kind of been sort of like a white male dominated lead for him. But it's never taken full force like this. And I will say the one thing that I think is wrong is there is a thing going around that he only did all this in the Odyssey to be eligible for another Oscar. And Oppenheimer is the obvious rebuttal to that, because he didn't do that at all. And the reason he won the Oscar for that is the Academy's diversity criteria have 4 categories, not 1. Cast is only 1. So you can also be eligible with your department heads, with some of your major crew choices. And so Oppenheimer was eligible because it met 2 of the 4 non-casting categories. So it is not assured that he would cast a movie simply to be eligible. That I think is a false flag. But I'm simply saying this particular project, he has literally been dragged to the mud on both sides for his casting choices now.
I wonder, for example, and then I think we'll move on. What if the Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson chose a black or a person of color to play Jesus? Would the outcry be similar? Because in Scripture,
worse.
You think it'd be really?
Because
even though in Scripture it describes Jesus as looking not Caucasian.
I'd say worse because of the figure involved.
Because of Mel Gibson?
Oh no, because it's Christ. That's like I think that in that figure, that individual figure is much more charged than anything in the Odyssey or any other story. Yeah, no, that
would be interesting if somebody even attempted to do that one time. Because I don't see why there would be an issue with that, because of, if you're going back to saying Homer described Helen as this, go to the Bible, they describe Jesus as this. So it wouldn't be far-fetched for us to see that sort of portrayal. This is going to be interesting, I would say. Very interesting to see how this movie does in the box office, what critics say, what the audience score says. I doubt it will be as opposite directions as the Michael movie was, as far as the audience score and the critics.
No, that's different. Those are not analogous. I mean, I think on balance, I hate to say it, but like my expectation is this whole discussion is going to be net positive for his critical score on this movie. The reason I say that is most of the critics, I think I know which camp they land in on this debate, and therefore they're going to want to ride for this movie to further their view on this, as opposed to simply evaluating the movie for its content and its quality. I think the one thing I think is interesting here is this. Lupita Nyong'o's quote to me was the moment I kind of said, aha, because I've been waiting to figure. Nolan is a subverter of genre. Every one of his movies does something to basically say like, hey, this is my spy movie, but I'm going to do this to it. And The Odyssey had been the one project up until now where I was like, I don't see what he's doing to it. And her quote made me say like, I think he's Hamiltoning it. I think you're right. Like that's the subversion or his attempt at it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think he's trying to do it in a way that's different from, say, we see modernizations of ancient stories done other ways. West Side Story, great example, right? It's like Romeo and Juliet, but we bring the entire Shakespearean play into the city with these two gangs, the Jets and the Sharks. So you see that. That's actually pretty typical. I think he's saying, I am modernizing the entire story that I want to tell, but it looks like the story from the 8th century BC. See that dichotomy of like, he's not making the Odyssey in World War II, which would be, that's the modernization, right? You create a World War II story, but it is the Odyssey. Mm-hmm. He's doing the actual Odyssey in his mind, but he's doing it with a 21st century lens. That's, I think, the attempted subversion. That is a huge risk. Like, forget the debate about this. That is an enormous swing if you think about what he's actually maybe trying to do, which goes back to my Al Pacino quote. It's like some of this stuff, I have the fisheye about it. And if it was anyone else, I would be totally out. But because it's him, I'm kind of like, he just hasn't missed. So I'm like, I kind of need to see what wild rationale you had for all of this. And does it actually work?
Yeah.
So I actually will leave the door open in a way that I probably wouldn't for, he's not just him. I mean, Coogler did something wild like this. I would do the same. I would kind of be like, all right, this guy's a genius. I need to see what he was thinking before I kill him for it. But you're right. There's a boycott the Odyssey thing going on right now. So there's going to be some folks who don't see this movie, who don't support it. I just don't think it's going to be enough to like make it a $200 million grossing disaster, right? Like it's probably the difference between if it was going to be 900, maybe it's 800, 760. But with something with the Odyssey though, I don't know what the box office really was going to be anyway. 3-hour epic for this kind of movie is not, as I said, we said it before, it's not like a surefire $1.5 billion type thing.
Yeah. Let's say 400 or 5.
That would be a massive disappointment. If you're correct, like that would qualify as a massive disappointment. I think it's going to be higher. Yeah.
That this English accent, like, and one of the things, and I watched it, and some of the people are complaining about it. It's Matt Damon in the battlefield saying, "Let's go."
Cut to Hugh Jackman. Let's effing go, Wolverine. No, my biggest things are the ones we talked about last time. There's something about these, forget this entire debate. My 2 questions. The trailers have not been ultra hot in my mind relative to some past Nolan trailers. Mm-hmm. And it's Damon. He is getting a complete pass because of all of this discussion. And I keep asking that question. Are we sure he's a great Odysseus? Because if he may be, he's one of the great actors we have. But I'm having that tough time connecting those two things. And if he's not a great Odysseus, I don't care what other distractions are going on. This movie is not going to be great.
When does this movie come out?
July 17th. You know who's sitting over in the corner just chilling, smiling, even though he's in both movies? Tom Holland.
Yeah.
Because Spider-Man's sitting there 2 weeks after this being like, well, if people are gonna save their dollars now on this, or people are gonna get all sideways about the Odyssey, like we got a nice family-friendly blockbuster for you 2 weeks later.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Let us know in the comment section below. Are you guys looking forward to seeing what Chris Nolan has in store for us with the Odyssey and his choices? And will the English accents distract you from what's actually happening? I think for me, it will. I'm going to be like,
But
I
by
just
the
don't
way, that's
believe this
also where
world.
the,
I mean,
yeah, but that's also where the historical accuracy thing starts to get a little fuzzy, right? Because in 8th century BC, nobody was talking with a Shakespearean English accent either.
True.
So,
true.
And even Nolan fell victim to this. I thought this was cool. One of the things I actually am legitimately stoked for this movie is the Goranson's doing the music for it. And there's a quote in the timepiece where Goranson says Nolan banned him from using an orchestra because they didn't have orchestras in the 8th century BC. And so I'm kind of like, that was one where I was like, I think Nolan might be outsmarting himself, because I'm like, you're telling people you're going for historical accuracy on the music, but you're clearly not going for it on the costumes and the accents and some of the other. So that's what I'm like, well, which is it? Now, I think that will make it interesting for us from a musical standpoint, because if you tell Goranson he can't use conventional tools, but he has to build an epic score, I actually want to see what he comes up with. And he's saying he's using gongs and all sorts of like things that were in existence in that time. I mean, I'm here for that. But I just point out the whole historical accuracy discussion. There's hypocrisy all over the place on this.
Yeah. James Bond.
Yes.
Updates.
Real
from casting director and writer. What are the latest updates, Brian?
Okay, so we have two notable updates. So after all of the false starts on James Bond casting, the most interesting and official thing that occurred is they actually hired a casting director. Yeah, you usually need those to cast people. So British casting director Nina Gold, who has done films from Star Wars to Jurassic World to TV shows like Game of Thrones, is the one who is now heading up the search. She dropped only one. She didn't give any clues on ages or anything like that. She said this was her one thing, quote, "Whoever is chosen will have to ooze sex appeal," end quote.
Yeah. Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Oh. Absolutely.
1,000%. You can't take that out of James Bond. He was a dinosaur in the 1960s. He's a dinosaur now. But sexy and sex appeal has to be part of who he is.
Yeah, man. He has to be suave. He has to be cool. He can't be corny and you know, he has to come up with those one-liners. He has to be able to
be inappropriate.
Yeah.
Like, that is part of it. Like, he crosses the line. And that's the chauvinism is part of who he is and what makes the character both kind of, you know, weirdly heroic, humorous, you know, and obviously despicable at points too. I mean, that's kind of the idea, right? That is kind of the idea. Now, Gold did also say, this was not a comment about age, but said they're looking for a Bond who can be Bond for at least 3 to 4 films. So similar to Brosnan, similar to Craig. So 3 to 4 films is the minimum commitment they're looking for from the choice.
Is Jacob Elordi still in the running?
Well, he's still on the rumor list. There's no reason why he's not. I mean, the only question has always been the Australian Commonwealth eligibility. But, I mean, there's no reason he wouldn't be in the running at this point, unless he took himself out.
Yeah. Listen, man.
Is he too tall? Does that not matter? He's like 6
foot. It
doesn't
matter.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't matter at all. I mean, there's never been a real true description in terms of height, right? He just has these adjectives that are associated with him as far as who he is and how he treats other people, how he treats women, how he goes about his day-to-day, I guess, right? And missions, but never in terms of his height. Has he ever been described as a Caucasian? It's just simply a Brit, correct?
That's a good question. I thought he was, though, because it's loosely based on Ian Fleming himself, right? Isn't that the whole? My thought would just be like, Hollywood, you can do tricks with height, so I'm not super concerned. But like the idea that like your base spy would be 6'5" or 6'6", like people like that stand out a little more than people who are a little bit short. That's my only like. If he's going to be a chameleon of sorts, and Jacob Elordi's that tall, I don't know. But you can do things with that. So.
Yeah.
So you're getting a sexy James Bond, and they need to play 3 to 4 pictures. Which again, if you look at Brosnan, you look at Craig, they each did 4 movies, and they weren't that young when they started. So while I think young is probably the most likely outcome, or younger, I actually think that her leaving it that way kind of opens the door for, people who are 35, 40. They're not necessarily out of it entirely if they blow away the process. But I would still think it leans towards someone in their, 25 to 30 range.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen Knight, who's writing the script. So this was one of the big questions, was when would this be set? Right. There was some speculation of would they take it back to the roots? Would they take it back to the 60s? Would they do period piece more like the novel, where the novel was set? Not happening. So Stephen Knight, speaking with Screen Daily, said his research for the new film has actually been with the current sort of SAS. He said, I'm talking to them about what they do every day. It's all real, because the author was living that life. In the war, he was doing those things. He knew people doing that stuff, going out there and killing people. Ian Fleming was such a great writer. And to be a writer, you have got to know the people. He then went on to say, on the process of reinventing Bond, he said, quote, Bond has been bulletproof. People have been able to make mistakes and variations, quite elaborate variations, and the character has survived because the core of it is like a diamond. You can't touch it. The person you are talking about is folklore. You'd be watching as a kid with your dad, the certainty, the confidence, the escape from something. Everybody buys into it. And that's the thing with Bond. Everybody wants it, end quote. So not reinventing who Bond is, that fits what the casting director is saying. And it sounds like he is talking to modern military for reference points on how to write this. So I think we are staying here and now for the film.
Makes sense. I mean, if we're going to go and modernize it, I think this is the time to do it. Especially given the run that James Bond has had and the run Daniel Craig had and the directions that it went. I think it's certainly time to go kind of back to basics, but modernizing it a little bit, I don't see any issue with that. As long as the core character is who James Bond is, and we as an audience can recognize that this is Bond, I think that's the direction that they really need to go.
I think maybe I'm reading too much into it, but Knight kind of saying that like the core of James Bond is so well established that you can't touch it. I wonder if that's a reference to, and I think this would be a good decision because Craig already went over this with us, is we don't need an origin story. That he's kind of saying the core of James Bond is so well known across generations, like we can just jump right into it. And I'm cool with that. Like,
Yes. I wouldn't want to see an origin story of Bond. Because again, we are who we are, but we evolve. And a person at 20 years old is not the same as they are if they're 30. Things change. And who you are changes somewhat. And a young James Bond is not something that I'm interested in seeing.
That's also, honestly, that's what Amazon Prime, that's what Prime Video is for. Like, if we're making TV series about the other 00s, then the origin story is you could do who was 007 before James Bond, right? And like, what happened to that dude? And there's a spot open. There's a spot open. And it's like, we know who fills it, right? If you want to do origin story stuff, do it like that because, like I said, Craig we already got he was promoted in Casino Royale. That was the beginning. And then we got his Skyfall roots. Like, we're there. Like, we've done that. Like, I think Knight is kind of tipping that. Like, we don't need to do it.
On Prime TV, the 00s.
Yeah.
And these do at the end of each one, they gotta go. We have to. It would be interesting for me if I was a Prime exec or whatever at Amazon and I'm talking to them about how we do this. You do a season of, call it the 00s, 001, next season 002, next season 003. Perhaps they exist all in the same world, but not that they all exist in the same world, but after each one, something happens to them at the end of that. Or I think that for me is interesting. Experiencing that world through the eyes of different double O's.
Yeah.
And it just makes sense if you want to expand and not leave it just up to James Bond and having to wait 2 years for another film to be made. If you want to live in this world, this is the world that we're building that's different from James Bond, because James Bond is his own thing. But the double O's is a different sort of situation as well. So, to me, that's interesting, man.
Yeah,
you
I mean,
can
it's
do
kind
that
of
so
like,
many ways.
yeah, and it's kind of like, I think back to like in the Bourne Identity, you know, when they activate all those other agents to go after him, you're like, oh, each of them has like their region, their area, and you know they're all going on missions, and it's like those are all threads there. You know, it's like they all have backstory. Like Clive Owen kind of was hinting at his backstory in that movie, and like, yeah, it's a similar concept to that. And look, I mean, spycraft on TV is one of the most fun genres. I watch anything that's spy related. And by the way, we'll talk about it in what we're watching. Amazon, I mean, has been lighting money on fire to do this ill-fated Citadel series with the Russo brothers. They definitely have room for a better spycraft show. And if they want to set it in the James Bond universe, so much the better. So.
Yeah. Masters of the Universe reactions. Providing hope for the box office, for its success, for the possibility of a Masters of the Universe 2. I don't know, Ryan. What have people been saying after they have seen this film?
So we know better than to take reactions as gospel. But I would say there's like a flicker of light coming from Eternia. I think it's too late to probably really save the box office for this project. I think what you're playing for now is that the film is more fun. It's just more fun than you expect it to be. And it takes on a second life when it hits streaming and kind of people revisit it and talk about it fondly as the years go by. And then maybe it becomes something down the road because of that. A cult hit, if you will.
Yeah.
But anyway, the world premiere was in LA and they allowed the reactions to go out. And first off, people were kind of noting that for all of the lack of hype, Amazon's, like the industry talk has been Amazon's body language is that they have high confidence in what they have. I will be watching to see if they actually let the reviews out early. Because that would actually, if those are strong, that would be the tell. Like if they let those out in the next week, so they don't wait till the day before or 2 days before, that might be, and it winds up, those are like 85%. I'll make a big number. Like that will be something to see if you can at least get some box office back. But basically the thematic praise is that the number one thing is, if you enjoyed the figures, the character, and the cartoon and grew up with that, yes, you will really enjoy the movie. That's the number one thing that seems to be coming out of this. Praise has also been thrown for stuff we know, the look, the costumes, right? People are like, oh, the accuracy, the craftsmanship of the props and all that sort of stuff. I've seen actually that the movie takes a little while to get going. Like I've seen the critiques kind of being like the tone and the humor feels off early in the film, but then weirdly for a movie of this type, that the third act is actually the strongest part of the movie.
Which is
That's
rare.
unusual.
Yeah.
So like I'll give you, this is just one that I think is representative of the types of reactions. Quote, Masters of the Universe is shockingly good. The action, the comedy, the drama, it all works. But above all else, the movie looks amazing. And there was one chase scene in particular where I kept doing a double take because of the crisp and clear of how it looked compared to most modern movies, end quote. That is kind of representative of what you're seeing. Like these critics who have no expectations are like, huh, that actually wasn't bad and kind of fun and reminded me of the show. What do you think? Is that enough? Like, if that's what it is that enough for this to actually be considered a success? Like, I don't know where we put it.
I am taking my youngest to see this. And if he enjoys this movie, I think that will be the thing that perhaps gives it legs to do well over some time. Perhaps even that weekend if the reviews come out earlier, right? I mean, this is a sort of kid movie. This is supposed to be the thing that, kids enjoy. And it's possible that they may be able to pull that off. So yeah, I think kids and parents who grew up watching this will be the thing that propels it to possible success. I don't know what success looks like. I mean, I would say 400 or 500 maybe. What do you think?
I think 500 would be. I think 500 would have been a great. I know you were hoping for bigger, but to me, to me, 500 on a He-Man movie, just on the surface, I would have been like, it had to have been good.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I don't think 500. I think even 500 might be out of reach. I think at this point, if it's just not like a colossal failure, so the budget's 170 to 200, so they probably need 400 to break even. I think even if they got 300 to 350 in this marketplace, but the 300 350 is like reviews are good, and the people who saw it are like, hey, you guys missed this. You got to check it out when it goes to streaming. That's I think what you're playing for. Like, here's another one I think is interesting. Quote, if you missed the hopeful, bright, and upbeat joy that the 1980s possessed, you have the power to find it again by watching Masters of the Universe, a film bursting with so much life and fun you truly don't want it to end. But boy, oh boy, when it does end. Like, I kind of think, like, if we were being honest, for all of our biases and the way we talk about genre and how we nerd out about it, that description is probably the best case for this film.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this film was not going to be Gladiator. That's not the point of a He-Man film. So and it's kind of like I said with a Mortal Kombat movie. It's like, what is the best version of a Mortal Kombat movie? It's not a 5-star movie. So I think with He-Man, it's kind of like, what is the best version of a He-Man movie? It's got to be a lot of fun. It's got to have reverence for the characters, the toys, the show. And then it has to have just some lasting appeal to make people want to buy the toys and see more. Even if that doesn't translate to massive box office dollars, I don't know. Maybe, it's like the Jim Carrey. You're saying there's a chance? Like, it's like that's where we are.
Yeah. When does that come out again? I think
it's June 5th officially, but they are doing early access showings on the 3rd, 4th, 5th. So we're 2 weeks away at this point.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing it, man.
I am too. And I'll say it's interesting. Like my wife is super excited to see it because she played with all the characters growing up. So she was like, that's one IP I definitely want to check out. She's like, and her reaction is like, it doesn't look that bad. She's like, those cat costumes look pretty accurate. Like she's actually in the camp that Gallatin doesn't look that bad as He-Man. She's like, that's about what I could expect. Like, so yeah. So my kid is the least excited, I think, which to your point about the children, like she is going in the least excited of the three of us.
Did she see the last trailer?
I only let her see the first 2 because then when they started putting all the featurettes and the additional trailers, I stopped watching the footage. So we saw the
last trailer is interesting.
Okay, I didn't watch the last trailer. So
the last trailer is pretty good.
I stopped watching all the footage, so I want to have some of the movie I haven't seen yet.
Yeah. Fast and the Furious TV series, Brian. Are you interested? I am not, and I will not say any more.
Oh man, you know why I love this story? Because Vin Diesel will be Vin Diesel, and like I think the Vin Diesel Rock feud is one of the funniest, best feuds we've had because it's like two guys who just, as I said to you, like they deserve each other in terms of their personality and their ego and the way they like to operate, and this was a testament to that. So this is not the first time Vin Diesel has done this, but it is very much in the category of what we would call rock moves.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was at Upfronts. He was out promoting something else. And he basically it was at the NBC Upfronts. He broke the news that NBC Universal and Peacock had not one, where's LeBron? Not two, not three, but 4 TV shows based on based on the Fast and the Furious franchise. As you said, Peacock is launching 4 shows in the universe. We're precious about these movies, but for the last decade, we have realized fans want more. And to expand the legacy characters and their stories, I had to wait until it was right. Quote, really, Vin? People were really asking for that?
I don't know who he's hanging out with, but I haven't heard even people who are fans.
And I like the
have
series.
Been fans.
Yeah, I generally like the series, but
they say, like, even John Campea, like, this has gotten ridiculous as far as what they've tried to do in these movies. It's just not, it's just out there. And I am just not there for it. I don't care. I don't care.
So the best thing is he made this announcement. So of course the industry sleuths started digging. So then Variety came back and said, well, actually, there's only one TV series that's actually in development. There are 4 ideas, kind of like in the writer's room, but only one actually has real work being done on it. So that's what I mean by the rock moves of, like, Vin goes out and announces there's 4, says there's this huge groundswell of support for 4. And then the reality is there's kind of actually one, if that.
Yeah.
Which kind of tells you NBC is very TBD because the last movie wasn't good, and B, didn't make a lot of money. It didn't make money, lost money.
Yeah.
I will say this. What Fast and the Furious, I'd be curious if people are still in on this franchise, what Fast and Furious related TV properties they would watch. To me, there's actually one that I would be at least moderately intrigued in. And it goes back to the very first film, which is if you wanted to do a TV series, a limited series, so not a multi-season series, but a limited series about someone getting sideways of the wrong people and having to build, race, and win at race wars, I'll watch that. Mm-hmm. So it's all about, like, street racing, building a car, the mechanics of that, the driver having, and then Vin Diesel is not going to bother being in that, but maybe if you got Michelle Rodriguez, like somebody like that to be like the driver, somebody like that, Rick Yoon maybe comes back, like he was the villain, and they got to beat one of those people to actually not get killed, or they have to pay off their debt.
Yeah,
I think you can do that for 8 episodes, and it could be fun and take the franchise back to its roots a bit and away from. But if you're here's the thing: if you're trying to do the Kurt Russell, Scott Eastwood global heist team that these films became, I don't think that's going to work on TV because there's too many better versions of that are already out there.
Yeah.
You're not Mission Impossible, even though you're kind of trying to be at this point.
Yeah. We'll see what happens with that, Brian.
But I think people are definitely ready for Fast Forever to end this. This thing has
move
gone
on from Vin Diesel.
I was just going to say, I think people are ready for this to move, to really be put on the shelf for a while and come back in new hands.
Yeah.
Bernthal
on his conditions to play Punisher again. I mean, I'll say this. He's had conditions before. What are the new ones?
I thought the timing of this comment was actually really interesting. In an interview to Esquire, kind of after the special came out, but before Brand New Day hits, where obviously he's already done his work. Really simple quote. I'm really down to keep doing more, but I think I have to be the one that's making it, end quote.
Based on that last one, Brian, I don't know.
Mixed feelings.
Yeah. And listen, there was one comment, shout out to the person that made this comment on our show. I wasn't going in there looking for something deep or a deep story. And that's fine. It didn't have to be deep, but it doesn't have to be a shoot 'em up for 20 minutes, just him going around shooting stuff. Punisher goes on missions. He does things that if it's brought to his attention, he goes out to do his job. The Last Kill wasn't none of that. Last Kill for me was kind of more the same. And again, we talked about it in our last discussion regarding this. And that was in previous iterations of the same character with Jon Bernthal playing it, he had, for me, already made the choice of becoming the Punisher. I just felt this was one episode of the Punisher and nothing special about it.
Obviously, as people who listen to our review show, I like the action better than Pablo. So I really enjoyed the last half of the special. I found it to be too short because I felt like it, as we talked about it, chopped off some threads like Curtis and kind of, as you pointed out. So there were some non sequiturs from the Netflix series to Brand New Day. The creative control thing, though, is really interesting to me. And him putting that out publicly, I think, is very calculated, right? He's clearly negotiating through the press with Disney and Marvel because they have installed this character into Brand New Day, which means the studio sees an integration of Spider-Man, Daredevil, Punisher, the Netflix TV characters, right? Which we think is great. I love the potential of that. And he's kind of pushing back on that, right? He's kind of saying like, well, I like the character, but I am not going to just play ball with whatever you write for me. I have to be the one determining when and where I show up. And that's a power play a little bit there, I think, in what is looking like an ensemble piece.
We have to see
Curious.
We have to see this iteration of Punisher in Brand New Day to sort of see how he's thinking about it. What sort of Punisher do we get that he has to come out and say this?
Well, is this an indication he didn't like it? Like,
is
there a hint in this that he actually doesn't like the version that's in Brand New Day?
That's what I'm saying. That could possibly be it.
Or is it maybe more a broader thing of Brand New Day was okay, but you can't Disneyfy this.
Oh, hell no.
Right? Like, so there's versions of this that are like pro Brand New Day. There's versions of this that are like a warning sign for Brand New Day. But in any case, he's indicating he's going to be a little difficult to manage in the context of an ensemble, which seems to be what they want.
Yeah, let us know in the comment section below what you guys think of this latest episode of The Void, where we talked to Nolan and the Odyssey, James Bond, the Master of the Universe. Seeing some light. We'll see. I'll be happy if my mind is changed as far as the expectations of this after seeing what we've seen so far in trailers and things of that nature. We'll see what sort of response it gets. And Fast and the Furious, I really don't care. I absolutely don't care. Bernthal putting this condition is interesting because now it leads to, does Jon Bernthal get to play the Punisher again? Is he Ed Norton it? You know what I'm saying? Is he filling that role of I got to be the one to do it? You know, is this his? Does he believe that this is his character that he has to but be the creator of? We'll see. But let us know in the comment section below what you guys think of all of these topics. And remember, if you haven't heard it anywhere else, you heard it here first on the Nerd Gen Report.